Hello, Dr. Chris Martinson here. Hey, have you felt like things are going faster and faster? You can't quite make sense of what's going on in the world. That, oh no, Chinese spy balloons and crazy stuff going on all over the world. And then you open up every day, it's like an assault on our senses. I have a point of view that that's actually by design and that this is a form of, let's call it cognitive warfare that's being waged right now. And of course, you need to stay out of the fray. But I'm noticing one of the areas that's getting harder and harder to keep up with is the amount of symbolism that is coming forward. Let's take a look at this right now that's from the recent Grammys, and we'll see if you can detect any symbolism in this particular clip right here. I'm noticing maybe a certain red tint. There's some horns there. There's obviously a lot of symbolism going on in this. Unholy is the name of the thing. And listen, we could just chalk this up and say, you know what? This is just what Hollywood does. This is what the music industry does, the entertainment industry. They're looking to create visually gripping, dynamic things with flames and all of that. But of course, you might notice as well that this is an element that we're seeing a lot more of lately, the so-called what we'll call satanic or Luciferian sort of approach. And that's fine. That symbolism is there. Is it propelling behavior or an emergent behavior? I don't know. But I will tell you that if we look at this symbolism, we see that kind of showing up all over the place, and it's been this way for a long time. So this is something I like to talk about back at Peak Prosperity. Our subscribers, we talk about everything. We're trying to figure out patterns in the world. What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? See if this makes sense to you. Take a look at this picture right here. On the left, what we're going to see here is the European Parliament building in Strasbourg, France. And on the right is a painting of the Tower of Babel by Bruegel in 1563, give or take. Obvious similarities there. So the question becomes, well, why would the Europeans want to construct a building that's based on the Tower of Babel? Because according to that mythology and that story, King Nimrod built that, and kind of that was the end of the kingship, end of the empire. A lot of bad things happened, including people no longer being able to speak with a unified voice anymore. They got all the different languages. So the symbology behind the Tower of Babel is one that says, if you strive too hard and you try and stretch towards the kingdom of heaven too hard, you get punished in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, don't like how that story turned out, so the European Parliament building is going to recreate this story, only this time going to get it right, I guess. But it's weird, however we interpret it, the symbolism is actually very much a thing. And when I use the word occult, what I mean by that, it simply means hidden. Occult is just something that's hidden, and in fact, it's actually hidden within. So there's a dark occult, there's a light occult, there's all these things, but it just means hidden. And so when we see the symbols that are hidden in plain sight, right? It's a building, it's outdoors, we can see it. The question is, what does that mean? And obviously, symbolism means a lot to some people. It's fairly meaningless to other people, but it still has an impact. And so when you watch the symbolism suddenly pushing and getting harder and harder and harder towards something, it's making a request, which is either ignore me harder or pay attention. So we're starting to pay attention to the signs of these things because it's hard not to get the sense that we're closing in on a denouement of some kind. There's some closing act of this whole last arc of humans' experiment and stories, especially with Western civilization, that these things are wrapping up and there's going to be a new future. I don't think it's all bad. I do think the future is made of winners and losers, maybe more losers this next stretch than winners compared to past periods of time. Those who are going to be winners are going to be those who understand the symbols for what they are, can read the signs accurately, can understand, are we closer to the beginning or are they closer to the end of the story? And they will know how to position themselves for what that new future is. But first, you have to know what's actually going on. You have to have an appropriate mental model and good framing and an architecture of where to hang things as they happen so that you can parse through them quickly and you don't have to be taken up by them, consumed by them, or otherwise spit out by an information machine that's coming at you too fast to process. So there's something here we need to pay attention to. I highly recommend that you do and that you take a closer look at these things and to no longer just sort of push those off and say, ha, it's irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. These things actually matter. The stories we tell to ourselves matter. The symbolism we use, whether or not we have good grounding in our morals, ethics, whether we understand what we're each saying because we have a shared language and words have meaning. These things all actually matter. And I truly believe my framing for this and why we're having this difficulty sort of understanding each other at this point in time, we've been split asunder by many voices, right? Is because we're facing extraordinary resource shortages as a species. 8 billion people, not enough water, land, soil, food, you name it. These things are starting to bite in. I think our human species, the herd, is getting very nervous. And when it gets nervous, it's a complex creature, things start to pop out, things that we might notice, signs. Maybe they're meaningless, maybe they're meaningful. But when you start to see all this occult symbolism start to crop up, I believe these are expressions of people getting nervous, of the herd of wildebeest is starting to skitter a little bit and doesn't know which valley it's to go to and hopes there's green grass in the next valley, but there are no more valleys in this story. The humans have occupied every crevice of this earth, and now we got to make do with what we got, and I'm not sure anybody has a plan for that. And so that's where the nervousness comes from. Ergo, that's why we have to start reading the signs, because we want to be in front of that story, not behind that story. So try and make sense of it. Have a scaffolding, have a frame to help you understand this, because it's coming quick. And what we need to do when things come quick like this is have an organizing framework that helps us understand what's important, what's not important, and keep things in frame so we only pay attention to the things we need to so we can make decisions and continue to progress ourselves and our families, our loved ones, our communities in the directions they should and need to go so that we can be happy, whole, resilient, and have lives that have good meaning and purpose and are otherwise fulfilling. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you next time.